Drink it in, man. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Cornbread! 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 Drink it in, man. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Cornbread! Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in, man.
Detroit Koolaid. Detroit Koolaid drinkers. What's going on, everybody? This is your host, Eric Oakrey, on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. Now, we're about a month away from draft season. So I know we've been talking about free agency. You know, we've been going on and on about what the Lions are doing, maybe what they're not doing, you know, what other teams are doing. Today, I just want to talk NFL draft. I want to get into all types of things regarding the draft. I want to talk about kind of the 4 legit options if Hutch isn't on the board for the Lions at 2. I've got some names I want to throw at you. Are there trade options? Are there opportunities to, here it is, everybody always says it, move down in the NFL draft? Everybody's favorite option always. I'm also going to tell you about the DTO scouting office, kind of how it's looking, how it's set up, some things I got going to help me come draft day, even some plans we got for draft day with both me at Chops in the D. You guys hear him here on the show about once a month or so, as well as a Google sheet that we may, we may put out there for the people.
And the people consist of the millions.
We might put that out for you so you can track live with us. Me and Chops might do some live audio going back and forth when the Lions pick, in between their picks, who we would have picked and why. We might do all that. And then I also want to talk about some buckets of players, both for picks 2, 32, and 34, and guys that I'm targeting and that think will be there and could be of interest to the Lions. And then we might even talk some what ifs here on the show about what if this happens, what if that happens. So plenty to do here on the podcast. But before we get rolling, you know I got to serve up that Detroit Kool-Aid for you.
Drink it in, man.
Side of cornbread.
Cornbread!
Make it a double.
Cornbread!
Let's do this. So when we're talking about like the top 4 legit options for the Lions, I mean, I still feel like Hutch is the guy. I really do. I think that if he's there, you don't mess around. You don't do the old, well, a quarterback's more valuable. You do take him. There's a few concerns I have about him just in regards to, some of his athletic traits, his length, but also maybe, sometimes he can come off a little over the top, but I think if he comes in there and works hard and produces, this is a captain, this is a leader, this is an energy type guy on defense, and a guy that can do some things. So if Hutch is at 2, that's still my pick for the Lions. Let's assume he's not there at 2. I've changed it up, everybody. I've tweaked my thinking. I think at 2, if Hutch is gone and the Lions like this player, you have to take this player based on upside, positional value, need, everything that comes with it, and that's Malik Willis, quarterback, Liberty. Now, Malik Willis is a guy that has a lot of people saying it might take him a while to get going. He's got some growing to do. He needs to learn this, that, and the other. Based on what I saw at his pro day, the fact that he can run, that he can throw, rocket arm, the way this kid, as I said on a previous pod, is a leader, has charisma, is a positive guy, is a faithful guy, is a guy that has swagger. These are all things I think that are just going to resonate so much with the players, that before you know it, when he's given a shot, he goes out there and runs for a 30-yard run or throws a ball up over the top of a touchdown. This could easily be the game changer the Lions are looking for at quarterback. And I know people can say, well, he didn't get it done when he's at Auburn, and he went to Liberty and he wasn't even that dominant. Like, I'm not too worried about it, to be honest. I think it's much more about the person, the leadership, that swagger that he has, and the ability for the Lions to finally have a running, make plays off schedule quarterback that also will be loved in the locker room, and a guy that just has a sense about him that he can go out there and play with the best quarterbacks in the game. And you get him at 2. You have a locked-in contract for 4 years, that 5th-year option. You can still put him in with Jared Goff there. He can run packages. He can run goal line, red zone, whatever you want him to do. Anything happens, Jared Goff, he steps in. And if Jared Goff stumbles, boom, when this kid's ready, he's the guy. And then you easily transition in 2023 with this guy. So Malik Willis is now my guy that I would probably lean to at 2. Because of all things he has going for him, and the only detractors are really that, yes, there's a bust factor as there is with all, high picks and quarterbacks, but also, yes, you're kind of doubling up on a position and not necessarily getting a starter. But this is what I've always said too about fantasy football. I play in a lot of leagues, as you guys know, a lot of leagues, and I love them all. But you always go into those leagues with people that think they're just got to fill their starters. Oh man, I'll just take like 2 running backs, 2-3 receivers, my quarterback, my tight end, and then I'm good to go. Then about week 4 or 5 comes around, they're like, man, I got no depth whatsoever. Like, my team looked good on paper, and now it's done because I didn't take any backups. I don't have any quality at these other spots when people get hurt, as well as just to kind of maneuver my roster. So, yes, you can easily plug in a defensive end, or even a safety, or a rush player, or anything you want there, and be like, hey, that fills an absolute opening. But to me, it's turning around to be more about value, as well as just, you're not going to pass on this guy and get him at 32. I don't want you to move up and give up future assets. If they like him, which I don't know if they do, maybe the Lions don't like Malik Willis at all. If they like him a ton and they would take him later, you take him at 2, so that you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to give up future assets. You still got all the picks in your pocket. You still got all the picks next year. You've still built your team how you built it, which leaves opening for a player like this. And you roll and you take your chances that he ends up being a great quarterback here for the Detroit Lions for years to come. You don't worry about the quarterbacks next year. You don't worry about, what Jared Goff thinks about this. You go ahead and you do it and you feel good about it. So that's kind of where my brain is with that top option. Now, my second option would probably be Trayvon Walker. Just because he can do so many things. He's so long and athletic. He looks like such a pro. I've heard some interviews with him. He just seems spot on. So to me, he's kind of the pick at 2 if that's the sort of, hey, we're just going to roll with Goff for 1, 2, 3 more years, whatever it is. And they feel like a Trayvon could come in and be a rush player, be a drop player, be a guy that they can move inside, outside, move all around on the defense, and that he would be productive at the NFL, which he didn't have the production at college. But to me, that doesn't mean that he can't. That means that he didn't because of the team he was on and things that were going on with how he was used. So I like this player and this person a lot as well. So that would be my second slot, and I would be fired up about him. It's kind of like, hey, we could get Hutch, but we got Trayvon, and we feel good about it. The third option, I guess, to me is Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame, and I'm totally split on this player. I feel like that he could be incredible. I feel that he could be a huge bust. I feel like he has special size and ability at the safety position, range. He can turn the football over, all those things you look for. I also feel like sometimes it's a bad thing when you have a safety that's 3-4 inches taller than most, a lot heavier than most. He also ran slow. Notre Dame's been known to have some players that have some high, tout about them just because where they went, and they end up not doing well at the league. So I have those concerns as well. But the Lions do need a safety. I also don't think that Tracy Walker, even though he's a leader and he's a guy they've invested in, he doesn't seem like a guy to me that needs a young pup that's going to learn right next to him. I'd kind of like Tracy with a real good vet or an up and coming young guy that can play ball. Isn't going to take any crap from him, but also is going to work well with Tracy, rather than Tracy be the big brother and some young guy come in and he's trying to tell him all what to do, and the young cat's like, "Hey man, I'm going out and making an interception, something you don't do." So I could see some friction there, to be honest. But Kyle Hamilton to me is I don't know. I'm really curious to see what he does in the league. Lots of people saying you can't take a safety at that spot in the draft. I don't really buy that either, because the draft is set up now where you can kind of take who you want to take. There is definitely still some positional value advantages, like I said, when you're taking a QB and getting him at that fixed lower price now, rather than taking a linebacker or a safety or a corner. Some of these things you can find kind of any day of the week, twice on Sunday, sort of like a running back as well. That's why they're not going as high, because you still pay them what you pay them, but you can find them in the second, third, fourth round, whatever. So I'm not like you can't take a safety at 2 if you love them, but I don't know if I love them, and I'm curious if the Lions do. There's kind of been some ins and outs about that's their target, and others are like, no, Brad Holmes wouldn't do that at that type of spot. I really don't know. I feel like, on a quick side note, Brad Holmes is still a mystery to me. I'm definitely on his side. I'm definitely always drinking that Detroit Koolaid, but Brad Holmes to me is a guy that he had a pretty good draft last year. He had a pretty poor free agency where he just was like, hey, I'm just going to let it roll. We'll just see what happens. And that ended up being worth 3 wins. And now they're trying to tactfully be a little more aggressive, but not too much. And then, this second draft, as well as how this team comes together under the coaching staff and with Goff at quarterback, is really going to be the true sense of what we have. Because if you guys all remember, I hate to bring up the name, but when Martin Mayhew came in here, he did some nice things to start, and then he fell off his last multiple years, making bad decisions. Bob Quinn came in, had a pretty nice, first couple free agent signings, as well as a nice first draft. Then he, lit this organization on fire with a lot of the moves he made. So you really got to hang in there and sort of see what Brad Holmes' philosophy is, what he does. I think, talking to Logan Lamorandier, Sports Illustrated, here on the show, my buddy Chops again, we all feel like a lot of the things he's doing are things that we would agree with, certain players he's cutting and the way he's using money and the way he's moving around. At times we like him to be more aggressive, and at times we shake our head or like, is Jared Davis really going to work? Is that really going to be all of a sudden a good thing here, where for years and years it wasn't, just because it was a different scheme, different regime? We'll see. Those are all big things to consider. So that's just a little side note to think about with Brad Holmes. Let's get on to my 4th option here. And some of you will love this, some of you hate this, but I think he's still in my top 4 to consider, and that's Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, a lot of people you would say, okay, why haven't you written this guy off the board? Like, he doesn't seem to love football. He's not going to love to be in Detroit. He didn't want to work out at the combine. There's all these things that doesn't scream Dan Campbell and company. Well, you know what he does do? He rushes the passer. You know what he does do? He makes plays. You know what he does do? He's a physical specimen. And those are all things the Detroit Lions need. So there are times that you go after talent and you worry about the other things later. Kind of like they did with Ndamukong Suh, where that seemed like a slam dunk pick at 2, based on his production and everything. Soon enough, before he even signed his rookie contract, you knew he's a bit of a kook, where he was talking about wanting to only sign for however many years, 4 or 5 years at that point, so he could get out and test the waters. You knew it was over at that point with that guy as a personality, but he showed up on the football field and made plays, and the Lions did the smart thing and let him go because he got $100 million. He's D tackle, and he did half decent for one season maybe in Miami, and before they knew it, they couldn't wait to get rid of him, and he's bounced around the league, and he's been marginal at best, in my opinion, as an overall player. He had some good years in Detroit. Everything else is ho-hum, and he snuck along and got a ring by riding the coattails of others. Congratulations if that's how you want to do it. So if Kayvon Thibodeau got drafted by the Lions, you get the best out of him for 2, 3, 4 years. Pretty much he's probably going to bounce at that point. But as long as you're getting production, W's, whatever it takes, you're going to feel good about it at the end of the day. So I'm not going to write him off if they've evaluated him as the top number 2 player or number 1 player in this draft. You take him, you play him, and you feel good about it. You don't know if it's going to be a long-lasting 10 plus years face of the franchise, organizational changer like you would want, but you pretty much know Tibbs is going to be better than most other options you can take there at the top of the draft. So I don't mind it. I have soured a bit on Thibodeau as a person, sort of like most have, but I go talent sometimes, as long as he's not going to be a problem in the locker room and this, that, and the other. Like, if you evaluate him as clearly the best or better player, you take him and you put your arms around him and you make him feel loved and wanted, and you put him in great positions on the football field. He makes plays. Next thing you know, he loves Detroit. He's wearing the Old English D, the Detroit First Everybody shirts. That's kind of how it goes. So everybody, there's my 4 options. Drink that in, everybody.
Drink it in, man.
All right, so let's talk trade options real quick before we go to the break. There's been talk about could the Lions trade with the Giants or the Jets because they have 2 top 10 type picks. Come on, man, that's not going to happen. You're not going to give up 2 top 10 type picks to go up to 2. There's nobody there you love. The Lions are going to be able to get that done. That's a dream scenario. Then you're picking at middle and at the bottom of top 10 and at 32. No, that's not going to happen. So we might as well just write that off the board. It'd be tremendous, but I don't see any way that it happens. Other trade options have been talked about. Would the Lions say, screw it, we're going to go up to 1 and get Hutch? We love him. We know he's going to sell jerseys. We know that he's going to make plays. We know that he's going to be incredible in the community. We know that he is the player we need. Do you go up to 1? Now, I heard some things recently, people talking about this, and they're like, it'd be a 3rd round pick. If you had to give up a 3rd this year or whatever it would take, to me, that would be fine. Of course, I love draft picks. I love to just sit there and take the player. But if that's what's going to take for me to get Hutch, I love Hutch and I want him on my team, I would definitely consider that to be a reasonable price. If the Jaguars want to play hardball and try to get 34 or a first round next year, I'd hang up the phone on them very quickly. I'd tell them where to go and how to get there. You can definitely sit there too and just do what you do. But if the price is reasonable and you wanted to go up to 1, I think that's something to at least explore at this point, as well as get other people thinking that you're willing to make that move. And if people want to come up to get a quarterback and you do not love Malik Willis, you do not love some of the other options, then yes, I would consider saying you're open for business and willing to make moves as well at that number 2 pick to move down, maybe mid-first round, wherever you'd have to go to let somebody jump up to get their quarterback, their player that they're looking for. And you just sit and pick at, 14, 32, 34, get some second rounder, get a pick next year. Those are all options for me. Do I think any of these will happen? Not necessarily, because there's always a million trade talks and this guy's going to do this and that. And nothing really happens until the draft gets going. And then we've seen some years where the first round is just absolutely crazy. People are trading left and right and people are moving up that you never heard about. So, I could see this being a crazy draft with a lot of trades, but as far as the Lions go, over the history, it seemed to be sit and pick. Now, Brad Holmes made a big trade up last year in the 4th round to go get his guys and then sat around for 2.5 rounds because he didn't have any picks. Brad Holmes is a bit of a wild card, man. If he was part of that whole, we don't care about picks, so let's go get players. I don't think he's there yet, but I think in next year and the year after is when you could see some of that crazy, like, hey, we'll move these assets for this established player approach. But I think he's willing to wheel and deal, but until we see it, I don't know that he's a guy that will trade out of 2 or trade up to 1. Probably will just sit there and take the person they've evaluated as the best player for the Detroit Lions. So everybody, let's get to our commercial break, get our great sponsors in here. That's the first part of the Koolaid Cast. Before you head to break, I'll go ahead and fill up that glass full of Honolulu Blue flavored delicious Kool-Aid for you.
Drink it in, man.
And let's get our sponsors in here. When we come back, let's talk about the DTO scouting office, some buckets of players, and some what-if scenarios. Everybody, we'll be right back.
All right, everybody. This goes out to my fantasy football fans out there. Now, you probably heard about Reality Sports Online, the most powerful fantasy sports platform where owners can build and manage their fantasy team like a real NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? I mean, we're talking free agency, multi-year contracts, rookie drafts, multi-team trades. You can put franchise tags on guys. It's as close as you're going to get to being an NFL GM. But do you think it sounds complicated? It's not. I'm here to tell you it's the best thing about Reality Sports Online is it's just more fun than your normal fantasy league, but it doesn't take barely any more time. After all this, are you still not sure? I mean, come on now. You can test your general manager skills by going over to Reality Sports Online, call it RSO. Please go check out realitysportsonline.com right now.
All right, Kool-Aid drinkers, we're back from the break. Thank you so much for listening to sponsors. As I always say, that really helps the show. I'll even give you a side of cornbread for that.
Cornbread!
What the heck? I'll make it a double.
Cornbread!
But let's get into the back half of the show here. And as I said, you know, I've enjoyed the draft for years here. You know, it started with a cardboard cutout, piece of paper, something where I made, you know, my top however many players. And then the next year, you know, I had a better board, and then I had a magazine. Then the year after, you know, I had a magnet board and blah, blah, blah. You know, every year it sort of went further, and I learned how to make my own thing so it's easier come draft day, as well as it gets me familiar with the players' names when I'm writing them down, moving them around, making my Google sheet, doing different things. So here at my house, I definitely have my office, you know, where I do a bunch of my work on all different things. You guys know I do some work for Pro Football Focus over there. I also do some writing for USA Today Lions Wire. I do some fantasy articles and whatnot that you can check over there from time to time. Life is obviously crazy, so I can't dedicate 24/7 to that kind of stuff like I'd like to, but I do all that. And then in my office here, I've definitely created the DTO scouting office where I've got, you know, a big board that has all the teams in alphabetical. It's a magnet board, and I have the 3 years of what they've done. So it's kind of like last year's draft. And in the middle, I have what they've done this year in free agency. And at the bottom is what they did, you know, the year before last year in the draft. So I kind of have a snapshot of what each team has done. I also have a board this year that's kind of just very easy for me to manipulate, but it's kind of a top 10 per position, both for fantasy football and for the draft, which will be easy to kind of tick players off and keep track that way. This year I did another set of boards, which was a full look at the league heading into free agency. So it had like their top, you know, 5 or 6, I think I did top 5 free agents per team. Then I had the cap space next to that. Then I had top 100 football players, kind of seeing who had the most top 100 guys. I wanted to kind of quickly see that. I have room to put the draft picks up there, as well as the free agents have moved around, I've sort of moved those 2 different teams. So with some Lions targets here in the middle of that board. So as those free agents have come off, you know, I've kind of slimmed that down, as well as, you know, moved players from side to side. It gives me a quick look at who's where and what's going on, as well as who might be left for the Lions at a quick glance. I do have a free agent board of people available. I've been working that as I have time. I've got other positional rankings that I have up for players heading into this draft, as well as the big draft board, which is all the picks from 1 to 200 and what was it? It was 59 last year. I haven't moved it all the way over to 2022 yet because teams are still wheeling and dealing. So you don't want to do that board too early. You're just moving around, you know, team names and magnets and stuff way before the draft. Just do that a little bit before the draft. And then as it gets going, I move the kind of have these team logos, which are pretty cool. And then I put the player that they picked right on top of those logos, the way I have it set up. May have to get you guys a picture of this craziness here in the DTO scouting office, but that's kind of how I have it set up. And it makes it fun for me. Like I have all these fantasy drafts, so I can come in here, make a quick, you know, board with guys that I want for fantasy or track this or that. It just makes it easy to come in here, enjoy football. That's kind of where I do the podcast from as well. So that makes it fun. It's kind of like my DTO scouting football office here where I get a lot of work done and have a lot of fun. So that's kind of my layout there. You guys can drink that in, I'm sure.
Drink it in, man.
But let's talk about these buckets of players. So this is a very simple board that I made this year, and it was to say, man, you know what I want to do is I want to have options at 2. And when I say options at 2, people are like, okay, why do you even need names? Why do you need a board of any sort? Like, it's very simple. Well, I want to still have some names because the Lions may trade to 6 or 7. The Lions may trade to the middle of the first round. They may like some of these players that are a little off the radar, but I'm still going to put them in the mix. So when I started doing that, when I look at pick number 2 for the Detroit Lions, the names that I came up with were Hutch, Willis, Trayvon Walker, Hamilton. I already laid those guys out for you of kind of my top 4. Then you have Thibodeau, but you also have Jermaine Johnson, Jordan Davis, Neal, the tackle from Alabama, as well as Ike Ekwonu, the tackle. Those are kind of the only players that I would view as worthy of not only number 2, but a slight move down that the Lions might do. And you'd say, well, why do you have tackles? Like, we're fine on offensive line. I agree. We are fine on the offensive line, and I wouldn't necessarily go that route. But because of their talent and because they're in that range, they're going to be on my board because there is a scenario where Brad Holmes could say, you know what, our offensive line is good. It might be real good. I want to make it the best. And the way you could do that is by taking one of these other tackle guard players, maybe getting rid of Hal Vaitai late before training camp, plugging them in, and then having down. Now, I wouldn't do that. I'm not suggesting do that. I don't think Brad Holmes will do that. But those players are good enough to at least be in that mix. Nobody else, you start moving other players up there. I think you're reaching a little bit, to some degree. So that's kind of my first tier of like, whoever the Lions pick it, 1, 2, 5, 7, 9, those are the kind of bucket of players. I think you're going to get one of those guys, and I'd be happy with any of those players. The hard part is when we talk about moving down from 32 or moving to pick 32 and pick 34. And when I do that, I'm looking at guys like, this is my 32, 34 type bucket. Devin Lloyd, Drake London, the wide receiver from USC, Jameson Williams, wide receiver, Nakobe Dean, linebacker, Chris Olave, the wide receiver from that school we shall not speak of, Boye Mafe, who's getting a ton of love, the edge from Minnesota, Jaquan Brisker, safety, Penn State, Daxton Hill, safety, Michigan, Petrie, the safety from Baylor, as well as Christian Harris, linebacker, Alabama. Now, I know you can say, man, there's just so many options. That's a very slim list. Pretty much all the mocks and everything I've looked at, those are the guys that are somewhat going to be there. And if the Lions get 3 guys out of those 2 lists right there, I think they're going to be very, very happy. So I think you make buckets like that. I think if you watch that video with Brad Holmes last year, he made buckets of guys that he loved and knew kind of what range they would go in, and then he just lets the draft board do its thing. He sits there, makes the picks, and feels good about them. So I think that's the same thing I'm going to try to do. I'm not going to necessarily know exactly who's on the board at those picks, but I got my buckets. I'll probably add and tweak those as we go. I pretty much gave them to you in order as well. Those are kind of how I have them sorted now as they get plucked off. I'm pretty much going to go by that order unless something changes or unless I feel I need to do something otherwise. And that's kind of how I do it. That's kind of how I do it in fantasy football as well. I'm putting buckets of guys I like. Positions of need is what I tried to focus on with those buckets. And then when my pick comes around, I'm trying to make a good value pick on a player I love at that point. So let's keep your eye on those. All right, here's one other thing I want to talk about today as we finish out this draft show. When we're talking about the buckets of players, you got your smaller bucket for pick 2, bigger bucket for 32, 34. Obviously, there'll be some other players in the mix once we see how it all shakes down. But let's go ahead and kind of put some – I know you guys a couple years ago or even last year, I think I did it where I did my combo meals, which was – I'll definitely try to do that again before we get to the draft, where I give you, the first 3 picks, kind of some different combinations. But let's do it right now. Let's say Hutch is there at 2. Let's put him there at 2, and then at 32 in a perfect world. Again, you're getting that fifth-year option, so you're wondering about a quarterback or some different positions. But let's go ahead and just say that Nakobe Dean is there, and they love him. So Hutch, Nakobe Dean. And then in the 3rd round there, let's go ahead and take a safety to fill that spot. And right now I'm going to go with Brisker out of Penn State for this combo meal. So you get Hutch, you get Nakobe Dean, you get Brisker. With those 3, you get pedigree from college, Michigan, Georgia, Penn State. You get guys that are all dogs, DAWGs as far as football players. You get positions of need. You fill edge, linebacker, safety, really loading up that defense. So to me, that's kind of like one of the ideal combo meals for Lions fans right now. It would be maybe get those 3 players. So let's go ahead and let's do another combo meal. Let's say that they take Malik Willis at number 2. So you fill your quarterback spot. Now, you were going to fill a rush edge there, but you didn't. So let's go down to pick 32. And at 32, the only edge rusher I have is Boye Mafe. Now, I've heard him going 19. I've heard him going at the bottom of the 1st round. I've heard him going early 2nd round. I don't know if I want to take him at 32 or not. So let's do this combo meal. Let's get the quarterback. And if you're going to get a quarterback, you often want to get a receiver to pair up with that quarterback. So let's say, I don't think he will be, but you never know. So let's do this combo meal. Willis, Jameson Williams, and then let's go ahead and take Boye Mafe at the top of the 2nd round. So in that combo meal special, you're getting your quarterback of the future, guy with a lot of talent, some question marks, but you're getting value there based on the position. You're then taking a receiver that may need to recover from his injury, but could work off on the side with Willis, as well as build that rapport for next season. You're willing to wait. Jameson Williams is an electric talent with speed and everything that goes with it. And then you are taking a physical freak, a guy that just looks out of control when I watch him on tape, but he's big, he's physical, he seems like a Dan Campbell type guy on defense that could also grow and hopefully get better and better, and that's Boye Mafe. Edge rusher, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call him, from Minnesota. That covers 3 big needs: quarterback, wide receiver, and edge, and it's much more of a projection. Let's wait and see how these guys pan out and go with upside, go with other things that we may have to wait on, but it may pay off big heading into later this year in 2023. So let's go ahead and do one more combo meal. Let's go ahead and do Trayvon Walker would be similar to Hutch. So let's go ahead and put Kyle Hamilton at 2. You take Kyle Hamilton, safety, that fills that spot. Now you get down to 32, 34. You're looking at my buckets. Do you want to go receiver, linebacker, edge, safety? Those are my main spots that I'm looking to fill with these first 3 picks. So I took my safety. So that takes Petrie, Hill, Brisker kind of off the board. Top player that I have that could be there but probably won't is Devin Lloyd out of Utah. This guy's been projected at number 4 in a recent mock, but there's a lot of people that don't love him as well. So to me, Drake London is very intriguing. I know that he would be there at 32, and I'm trying to give you guys some realistic combo meals. So I'm trying to think. Let's play this scenario out that Drake London is somehow there. A little bit off the board, but Hamilton, Drake London, both those are getting physical specimens. I mean, both, 6'3", 6'4", both in the 210 to 220 range. Big physical players, right, at wideout and at safety. And then you're waiting to see who falls kind of at that 34 selection. And even though you added Jared Davis, even though you have Derek Barnes, even though the Lions say they're only going to play a couple linebackers, I'm thinking at the top of that 2nd round, one of the best options that might be available if you take a safety and then a wide receiver would be Christian Harris, the linebacker from Alabama. Now, I've seen a lot of Alabama guys fall, especially at the linebacker position where they're beat up, they just, aren't valued as high, whatever the case may be. They're two down players. I feel like he showed crazy speed, and you watch him on tape, and he's just a madman. He will blitz the quarterback. He will come after you. He will punish you when he sees it and hits it in the run game. And he's also got some old Jared Davis in him too, where he will pick the wrong gap. He will miss attack. He will miss, a play based on misdiagnosing your speed. I get it, but I think that he could be very fun to watch and intriguing as well. And fill in those top three spots. I mean, you got 3 high picks. If you can get an edge rush, quarterback, safety, wide receiver, linebacker, any 3 out of those combo meals, and piece them together and walk away with those first 3 going, all right, we got 3 big needs filled with 3 guys that we can build around. And I think that's what they would do, because that just opens you up for the rest of the draft. Take BPA, best player available. So I think that'd be really intriguing. I wanted to get those combo meals in so you could think about them. And let's keep this thing rolling. As far as the what ifs, just to finish it out, I just feel like the what ifs for the Lions are, are they going to add another premier player or 2? Or are they just going to roll into this year with kind of these ho-hum, bring our guys back, coach them up, Tracy and DJ Chark are our main pieces. Like, I'd like to see him add another piece or 2. Jabril Peppers at safety, who I mentioned on Twitter. You guys can find me at Derek Oakrey. Deshaun Elliott, safety, physical player. You go down the list. They've added to receiver and whatnot. So to me, it's kind of like your main spots are safety. They just brought back Jared Davis, so that slims down linebacker. They brought in Mike Hughes. I don't mind their corners. So how could you bolster the offense, with a good backup tight end or, some other type of position that would really help you? And I don't know, like the what ifs are just, I feel like they need more to get rolling this season, but you may just see that as their major moves, try to nail a great draft class and roll from there. So, the what ifs with the Lions are sort of like fans saying like, is that enough? Like, are you being aggressive enough? Yes, you're trying to be smart, but other teams are loading up at different spots and loading up with offensive talent. Can you compete? I think that'll all come to fruition. But as far as the draft goes, I think everybody needs to be absolutely fired up about it. When you're hearing this, it'll probably be about 1 month to the NFL draft. I'll be doing some mock draft shows. I'll be having Chops on. I'll have Logan Lamorandier from Sports Illustrated on. We got to get the king of all bros, Stefan, back on the show to say bro a lot, make everybody laugh, as well as give his football takes. And there'll just be so much content. And this is such a fun time of year. So between all the business, work, family, friends, everything else, I'm definitely going to try to bring you guys some great draft content, as well as a lot of that Detroit Koolaid.
Drink it in, man.
So everybody get excited about it. It's a big time for the Lions. They're putting their team together smartly, strategically, as well as going to load up and do big things come the NFL draft. So thank you so much for listening to the show. I'll catch you next week right here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. Take care, everybody. I'm out.
Pack the bag, start the plane. This game is over. It is over. What a comeback by the Lions. Drink it in, man.
I worked at a chicken shack when I was 16 years old. Anyway, so I worked at a chicken shop, chicken shack. I'm in this twilight zone. I don't know what this is, really. Chicken shack. I learned how to clean chicken. There's no turds here. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off. One of the few in this league that could wield the hammer of Thor. I'll get 2 venti. I go to, Starbucks. I'll get 2 venti, black eye in both. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. All right, and on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap. Then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. That's what I come in with. That's how I start the day, so...